Redditors who were a missing person. What's your story? Got tired of my dad kicking the shit out of me, so I ran away at 15. KSP found me less than a week later drunk as fuck in the train yard by where I lived. Dad was pretty upset, but he got sober and stopped being a dick after that. Dang, that sucks. I'm glad he got some of his shit together. My parents stopped talking to each other since I was 5, but they still lived together. One day, my father took me to go shopping with Hi Monsieur. We came back to find all the neighborhood looking for me and screaming my name. Well, my mother was relieved, but my parents had their 1,245,543 fight again. This could have been avoided with one phone call. I wish they could just divorce. Catholic. No, they just don't love each other. When I was young, probably about 6 I think, my family went on vacation to Yosemite. We stayed in a small cabin at a campground. I met another kid who was a bit older than me, and we went exploring. Apparently we went a bit too far, and eventually ran into a bear cub. We just stood and stared at each other for a few minutes and went our separate ways. When I got back to the cabin, I found out that park rangers had been out looking for me because my parents had no idea where I was. For some reason they didn't think my bear story was as cool as I did. I think your bear story is the coolest. My sister once had the entire neighborhood, the police department, and God knows who else out looking for her. It turns out, she had crawled behind the sofa, and fell asleep on top of an air conditioning vent for about 5 hours. My mom went inside as the sun started to go down, and sat down on the couch to cry. My sister then crawled out from behind the couch, and started petting her on the head, asking her what was wrong. Wow, imagine that feeling of relief and disbelief all at once. Insane. In 2nd grade, I fell asleep on the school bus ride home and missed my stop. My mom always waited at my stop to meet me, and freaked out when I didn't get off the bus. The bus driver looked back, and since I was lying fast asleep, he didn't see me. An hour later, I woke up at a random school bus terminal on the outskirts of town, and my mom had phoned half the town freaking out. Funny story to tell now, but my poor mother was convinced I had been kidnapped for a solid 2 hours. It really took a lot out of her. My mom had to chicken a bus driver for not doing a sweep of the bus when he parked it for the night. Poor kid woke up in a dark bus and was terrified. This was before cell phones were common for primary school children. He made a fuss until the night janitorial staff went to investigate why one of the buses was making noise and moving around a bit. Primary school kids are getting cell phones now, not me, but my brother was missing for around a year. He'd disappeared before, but only for a few days. He suffers from paranoid schizophrenia and would often get delusional, but this time he didn't turn up. We live in NYC and my parents had no idea where to look for Hi Monsieur. They'd regularly go to the police station and look at pictures of bodies that had turned up. He didn't have any friends or girlfriends we could ask about Hi Monsieur. He had just vanished. A year later we got a call from a hospital in DC. My brother had been picked up on the street, nearly dead from malnutrition. He'd gone to Washington to warn the government about something or other. He often refused to eat, believing his food was poison, and lived on the streets for a year. The only reason he survived was because other homeless people took care of him and convinced him to occasionally eat something. He was a skeleton when they found him, full of flea bites. Eventually my parents nursed him back to health. He's still mentally ill but hasn't tried to disappear again. I think about him whenever I see a homeless person. And GT. The only reason he survived was because other homeless people took care of him and convinced him to occasionally eat something. As much negativity you hear about homeless people, I hear about how giving they are to each other. Just like every societal group, there are good, bad and evil people. Everyone has a different story, reason as to why they are homeless, and many are good people. I learned that when I worked a side job while in college as a single mom at a gas station that was located in a downtown area mixed with average working class, business class and homeless people. I talked to many of them and befriended some. One local homeless guy addicted to crack came in every day for coffee and befriended us all, and one morning a young girl worker was getting harassed by a guy high on heroin who was trying to attack her over the counter. The local guy ripped off his jacket and jumped in to help her ward off the guy. I saw it all on camera. He used to come in at 5 a.m. so female employees wouldn't be alone with creepy drug addicts. He was great. We brought to him home-cooked meals and birthday cakes. They can seem so scary, but some really are good people. I got lost at Six Flags as a kid and it seemed like the entire police force was looking for me. Same but Cox Farms. I was perfectly calm, monsieur. Everyone that I was with moved from where they were after I went to get food. I was pissed afterwards though because of how stupid the whole thing was. The one in Centerville. I lost a kid there. I mean, I found her too. I was kidnapped by my biological mother and missing for 3 months when I was a year old. My bio mother has a horrendous crystal meth habit. Took me during a court-mandated visitation and kept me in her various sellers' houses. When I was found, I hadn't been changed in days. I was in damp clothing and I had been given cough syrup daily to keep quiet. She was arrested and eventually released. Who reported you for being missing? It was my first day in kindergarten. I was supposed to go to the after-school daycare, but I lost the note saying I was supposed to. So the teacher shoved me on the bus and told the bus driver where I lived. The bus dropped little 5-year-old me off at home. All the doors are locked and my mother wouldn't even get out of work for another 2 to 3 hours. So I do what in any little kid does, I sit on my front porch and cry. Luckily I lived right across the street from the high school and this angel of a woman sees me from the bleachers while a soccer game was going on. She comes over to check on me and stays with me the entire time. Meanwhile at the school the staff is going crazy because I'm nowhere to be found. My mother was called and as I'm told, crying profusely. Then out of the blue I see this 1960s brown Cadillac pull up and over walks my principal. He thanks the women for taking care of me and brings me back to the school. Because of my situation they suspended my teacher and the bus driver. And I never do anything without proper paperwork. Edit. Just talked to my mother and apparently the teacher left because of major medical issues at the time. Something similar happened to me when I was little. I'm mentally disabled, but not enough that people care. My parents always gave me a note to hand to the teacher to let them know if I was supposed to go home or to a babysitter that day so they could make sure I got on the right bus because I wouldn't be able to figure it out on my own. One day I forgot the note. For some reason, instead of calling my mom or my babysitter and asking where I was supposed to go, they just put me on the bus home. I didn't know what to do when I got home and it was all locked up, so I started walking to my babysitter's house about a mile away until a family friend driving by spotted me and picked me up. No teachers got in trouble, not really missing, but my parents flipped and filed a missing person report when they couldn't find me. I was left at Walmart by them. The only reason they found me was because they retraced their steps and Walmart was paging them every 5 minutes. How did they forget that they left you at Walmart? You'd think they'd have realized that before they filled out a missing person report. You'd be surprised. I used to work at EK. People would forget a lot of things. People there. The saddest thing is that it wasn't always forgetting. I remember a case where a little child was dropped at the kids area and was still there after 3 hours. A search was conducted of the entire store, but the parents were nowhere to be found. They eventually showed up in the early evening. Turns out they went to the seaside for a day and didn't want to take their kid. Was never reported, but my dad once forgot me at a cafe in the mid-90s during a time when local police was looking for. Because everyone was paranoid at the time. My mom had made me learn my full name, my address, our phone number and my parents' work phone numbers by heart, and so when people realized that I was alone, they were able to call my mom at work. Shortly after, my dad showed up absolutely horrified. He had forgotten that he'd taken me with "Hi monsieur. Make your kids learn your phone number by heart." We set our phone number as the unlock code for the iPad and wouldn't open it for "Hi monsieur." A bit of a pain to type in each time, but he memorized it pretty damn quickly after that. I do this for friends' numbers just in case. Surprisingly fast to learn once it's a password. My mother was on the phone with the police after I fell asleep in a cemetery for 7 hours after school. I had a shit home life, so I'd be anywhere and everywhere I could be to not go home. Beginning of the school year was still really nice outside, so I decided to hit the Dunkin' Donuts near my house, grab some coffee, and I walked to the cemetery that was maybe 10 minutes walk from my house. There was a really nice mausoleum in the cemetery, which happened to be the structure at the highest point in the city. So you can, on a clear day, see about 15 miles. I chilled there for a while, just kinda thinking. About 300 feet away is a statue of Jesus on the cross, with other figures. I was kinda tired, so I laid a little ways away from it. Just enough to get some shade, not enough to be laying on it. And I listened to music until I passed out. Woke up a few hours later. Figured, fuck it, might as well go home, and my mother started losing her shit. He just walked in. "I'm so sorry, where the fuck were you?" I left and went back to the cemetery.